Misconceptions about the slave trade. I've been noticing lately in the stuff that I'm reading that there's a lot of there's a lot of misinformation and a lot of people, especially like black professors, are inadvertently putting white people up on a pedestal and insinuating that black people are stupid. And that's what's being inferred. And it's sad. But the Atlantic slave trade, it did not encompass the white man just landing on the continent of Africa and gathering a bunch of black people and then putting them on a boat. That's not the way it went down. If we use a little common sense and logic and historical information, we can get a better sense of what happened. I'm not dismissing or pardoning the actions of the other side. I just think that there's too much dis and misinformation out there. But basically, through the 16th, 17th, and 18th centuries, and way past that upwards into the 1800s, especially for South America, there was a vibrant slave trade that went on. It was obvious. There's no denying it. But its facilitation, that's a different story. So when we look at the trading ships during that time period, especially international trading ships, they would go from port to port, pick up products and goods, and they would drop those products off at different ports. Not much different than what I do today as a truck driver. I pick up goods from one warehouse and I drop them off in another warehouse. But anyways, I'll do my best to describe the route and the goods. If we start down in, say, Georgia, the ships would pick up cotton and possibly rum. And they would go up to the South Carolina, would also probably have cotton. They would keep moving north into North Carolina and Virginia and pick up tobacco. They would then move to New York if they had to pick up, drop off finished goods or some of what they already had on board. From there they would move up into New England and drop off some of the cotton, and they might take on finished cotton textiles like cotton shirts and cotton pants. From there, they would sail across the Atlantic to England, and if they had purchasers, buyers for the products that they had on their ships, they would offload the goods, the products, to the buyers, to the purchasers of those goods. From England, they might take on tools. They might take on metals. From England, they would travel south along the coast of Europe, and they would hit France, Portugal, and Spain if they had clients and buyers or sellers of products and goods that they could sell right back to South, Central, or North America. From Europe, they would obviously cross the short Strait of Gibraltar, and they would end up at the continent of Africa. They would sail down the west coast of Africa, and they would meet up with the African slave traders. And it was the African slave traders that traded African slaves for products that they wanted, ordered, or for products that were left over on the ship. But basically at that point, the ships, unless they had very specific orders, would empty out their holds, their cargo holds, of whatever rum, sugar, tobacco that they had left over. Sometimes gold, silver, trinkets, sometimes textiles, maybe a musket here and there. But that's what they traded to the African slave traders. The trading ships would then take on a cargo hold full of slaves and take them to South America and then possibly up into the West Indies, Caribbean. And then if they had any left over, or if they had very specific orders, up into the United States. When they hit South America, they would pick up, I'm presuming, fruits, vegetables that grow in that climate, temperate, that land, that region. Papaya, mango, plantains. And then they would sail up to the Caribbean, West Indies, and pick up sugar, molasses, possibly rum, unless that rum was made in the States. But and then they would hit the bottom of the United States, especially Georgia, to pick up cotton, and South Carolina to pick up cotton, like Savannah, Georgia. And the whole trade route would start all over again. And that's just an example of the trading and buying and selling that went on during that time. So the misconceptions is that the white man just landed on the coast of Africa, specifically the west coast, and a crew of 14 to 18 people were able to overcome dozens and dozens of Africans, and they were able to capture those Africans and just manhandle them to the ships. Well, this is not true. These ships had insurance. They had a lot of money going in and out. They had owners. They had investors. They had deadlines. They had timelines. They had commitments. These crew of 16, maybe 20 at the most. Don't ask me, I'm just pulling numbers out of my ass, but I don't see a trading ship having any more than a crew of 20 people. They didn't have the time. They didn't have the resources. They didn't have the manpower to dock at the port, get off, and somehow just go up to Africans and say, hey, how would you like to be a slave? That would be illogical, and that would be nonsensical. Africa was known as the white man's grave because the white man did not last very long in Africa, especially because of disease and the local species of animals and the Africans themselves. Thoughts of, like, say, the Zulu tribe. The Zulu tribe definitely didn't take any shit from the white man. They didn't take any shit from the Africans either. The Zulu tribe would just walk down the whole continent of Africa and kill whoever they wanted to kill. Take whatever the hell they wanted to take. But just like throughout the rest of the world, the continent of Africa, especially sub-Saharan Africa, had dozens, if not hundreds, of tribes. And over time, as those tribes got bigger, well, they would encounter other tribes. And pretty soon, human nature takes over and they start fighting. Just like all the European tribes. Romans against the barbarians, against the Gauls, against the Anglo-Saxons, against the Vikings. Just like all the Native American Indians of South America, the Aztecs and Incas fighting, and then you have all the Navajo and the Apache and the Chippewa and all the Native American tribes used to fight as well for the same reason. Territory, mates, fresh supplies of water, hunting grounds, resources. Well, it wasn't any different in Africa. So, the question is, how did the white man get a hold of so many slaves? Well, it could not have been done without the Africans themselves. You see, the African slave traders who were black, they belonged to certain tribes. Or they just didn't care. But they had crews of men that would go and capture members of other tribes, especially rival tribes. And I don't mean to sound crude, but they would gladly trade their fellow African, who they really didn't care for. They would gladly trade them for a bottle of rum and a carton of cigarettes. And that's how the slave trade was facilitated. You know, a lot of people think, or they're inferring without even thinking about it. They're inferring that black people are just stupid. That black people were just standing on the shoreline and just jumping up and down and saying, hey, take me, take me. Or after they saw what happened to the first residents of the first slave ship, They couldn't learn from that experience and equate the white man with, bad things. But the Africans did not run from the Europeans. They didn't run from the white man because they didn't have anything to fear from the white man. The Africans feared their fellow Africans because that's who was capturing them. It was their rivals. It was their fellow Africans who actually had the time, the resources, and the manpower to surprise and capture dozens of Africans at a time. The white man did not have that. The white man did not have the time, the resources, and the manpower to capture Africans. You're talking about a crew's complement, a ship's complement of 14, maybe 20. And how would they survive? Like even if they had a musket, if I fire off my gun in a movie theater, what does everybody do? Well, they run for the exit. I'm not insinuating you can't capture people with guns. What I'm saying is, back then, if you shot your gun off or your musket, you're either going to kill somebody or scare the hell out of people. And so, how do you capture slaves with guns? The white man didn't have time to sit there with ropes, and eventually Africans would learn all this, and they would obviously stay away from the white man, or they would go grab their spears. Hundreds and hundreds of Africans would say, "Hey, there's only 20 white people there. Let's go kill them with our spears." How easy would that be? It would be really easy. Like I said, the Zulu tribe didn't take shit. They didn't take any shit. They didn't take any shit from any Africans either. And they were African. They would kill you if you just looked at them. I mean, they went against the Dutch in South Africa. They didn't care. There's 10,000 of them. 10,000 Zulus attacked 500 Dutchmen. So, I'm not blaming the other party involved here, the white man. I am, however, going to infer and insinuate that the major reason for the facilitation of so many slaves leaving Africa was because of the Africans themselves. If it wasn't for the Africans themselves, there would not have been an abundant and steady supply of slaves to be sold and traded to slave traders in South America, especially Brazil, slave traders in the West Indies, and the slave traders in the United States. And hopefully now you realize the misconceptions in the slave trade. Once again, I'm not just, not blaming the other party involved. I'm not dismissing their actions at all. Not at all. I'm just saying that lately I've been reading these articles and books and just insinuating that black people are stupid. And that they just stood on the Ivory Coast shoreline and waited for slave traders to come and pick them up. And that's not the way it happened. That's not the way it went down. And you wouldn't have The only reason why even say 100 slaves ended up in the United States was because of the Africans themselves.